Welcome in, everyone, to the Crowded Booth. My name is Bryce Koon, and we are pumped to be talking college football, Week 12 reactions, playoff predictions, what we're going to see tomorrow night in the committee. Will Mannis and Ralph Leary going to rock it alongside me. Beamer ball's rolling. The Gator Chomp is going, and the SEC is hands down the best conference in college football. We'll see you on the other side of this here on the Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
Welcome in, everyone, to the Crowded Booth. My name is Bryce Koon, alongside Ralph Leary and Will Mannis. We are absolutely pumped.
Facts.
There should be a ref in the thumbnail. We'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the playoff conversation. But, ladies and gentlemen, we're embarking on Week 13. Only so much more Maction left in college football. Guys, we only have, 2 more weeks of Maction? And then it's over.
Yeah.
It's over. But if you want to catch some action, head over to the Crowded Booth and you can watch us play the Maction League. Ralph with a win this past weekend, escaping. Will with one of the more ridiculous wins you'll ever see in EA College Football 25. I was watching it as I was taking off. I broke the law. I was watching as I was taking off. I did not turn off airplane mode. So we were about, maybe 1,000 feet in the air in Atlanta. And I was still watching. It was awesome. Guy next
Bryce had the fastest game in history.
Fastest game in history went to me. About, crazy stuff.
I'm calling the new Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, on you. She's a good shot, by the way. Not to get political, but
is she as good as the Turkish guy from the Olympics?
Maybe better. Look it up.
Look it up.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up.
Google it. All right.
Wild.
From college football, week number 12 was, for a lot of people, they were like, hey, it's not going to be really fun, but it's going to be awesome. Power Tech giving Ralph some love. Troy beat GSU. Drippy nowhere to be found. He is hiding in the shadows. Doesn't want to be known. Doesn't want to be seen. In the shadows. College football, week number 12, was a lot of fun. I got to take in a game in person in a place that, God, I hope Florida gets good because, geez, that environment was awesome.
It's good. They're already good.
Probably one of the best teams in the country because they play in the SEC. So, we're going to talk a lot about, we're going to have some takeaways. We're going to dive into this playoff conversation, which is where I want to spend most of tonight's show. And then, yes, we will take a look at best bets where week 12 belonged to Mr. Leary. Ralph stretching that lead out. It is what it is. I mean, I think it's over. Like, Dr. Bob, I need you to calculate, but mathematically, is Will still in this thing?
I haven't been in it once this year.
Last week you said, "Hey, don't let me win today."
Well, Auburn decides to feast on lesser competition.
Yeah, that was, stretch it out, Ralph.
Pause.
Michael Penix version. So shout out, the Falcons are absolute trash, and it's awesome. At least we're not the Jaguars.
That's a one-off. They played a good quarterback finally. Let the record show.
Just win the NFC South is all I care about.
Let the record show that I have always said Bo Nix was a good quarterback. Still stand by the fact that he was a reach where the Broncos took him, but it doesn't matter because he was obviously the right pick.
I can't wait for next April in our NFL draft live stream again because, God, that was so much fun. And having Chris Marler just come in and just drop the F-bomb a couple times was wild as well. It's a good time. But no, in all seriousness, I wanted to kick tonight's show off by letting you know that we are entering into the back half of the regular season of college football. In just 2 weeks, there's going to be around 100 teams that are done playing. And so it's sad. I think it's
come soon enough for some of us.
It's so true. So very true.
Yeah, for these two guys, it is. LSU tickets are in ample supply this weekend. Possible weekend plans. Dr. Bob, you want my media credential? Because I'd rather sit at home. It's the AJ Swan.
You won't get to see the gold uniforms in person.
God, I mean, what are they going to wear with that?
Quick question: can't Vanderbilt say they want to wear their gold uniforms? Technically,
no. The home team gets the right. I thought.
I thought it was the away team got the right.
The away team gets to dictate what uniforms they want to wear?
I thought it was. Am I wrong?
No. I have no clue.
No. The home team.
I think the home team gets to dictate. Because wasn't their situation? No, because remember, it was Colorado and who? Colorado did that with someone earlier this year, where they tried to wear their white ones at home. I don't remember. I don't know if it's an SEC rule, Ralph, or what it is. College football week number 12. Let's talk about the week that was. We're going to get to our individual takeaways. We'll start with the man not in the hat that he was referred to in the offseason, but we will start with Will Mannis. Let's go. What's your big takeaway of the week? What do you got rocking for us here on Monday night?
Where'd it go? There it is. Is Arizona State the best team in the Big 12? Big road win against Kansas State on Saturday puts them in the driver's seat. I think. Well, them and BYU are both in the driver's seat for a Big 12 championship berth. They play each other this Saturday. BYU 6-1 in the Big 12. Arizona State 5-2. So if Arizona State can win that game, they could be going to Dallas. And I mean, they're really good, and it's wild. Their preseason win total was 4.5, so they have vastly overachieved expectations, sitting at 8-2. And you know they have this attitude about them. They're a lot of fun to watch. Kenny Dillingham, I thought when they hired him, I was like, okay, this is a cool story. You know, he's an alum. They're in a difficult position. They're going out and getting a young, fiery guy to just lead the program through what will probably be a dark time. No, he has turned it around quickly. I think he's got that it factor as a head coach, and I think he's at the right place to do it, being his alma mater. And they're fun to watch. They get the job done. They're not real flashy. It starts on defense with them. They're ranked 44th in total defense in the country, 55th in offense. If you want a comparison, Colorado's 56th in total offense. So their offense is just as good. They just do it in different ways. They do it mostly on the ground. Cam Scatabo, who's been banged up last couple of weeks, he's already up over 1,000 yards this year. Their quarterback, Sam Levitt, been really good. He's at 1,900 passing yards so far. But they're just a really, really good group that he's put together quickly in 2 years when you thought that they would be really bad. And they're a great story, and they're playing really well. You know, but sometimes it takes getting a wily vet, a guy that's been around for a while, a guy that's at his third program now, that's just played a lot of football. Jeff Sims. Don't overlook his contribution on this roster. But no, Arizona State, fun to watch.
You can overlook it.
I hope they can beat BYU and get in that Big 12 title game and get a shot at the playoff. I think they've earned it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's a 3-team race there at the top. Colorado in a similar situation. If they win, then they're going to create a three-way tie as well, which is crazy. Colorado's won 4 consecutive road games. That's pretty big. No, I love Kenny Dillingham. There was
let me quickly answer Gavin's question. What does this have to do with Auburn? That's former Auburn offensive coordinator Kenny Dillingham, part of the Gus Malzahn coaching tree, which, by the way, is I think a very underrated coaching tree that nobody really talks about.
It actually
it's actually a really good coaching tree. You've got maybe the best team in the Big 12, probably the best team in the ACC. Those 2 head coaches came from the Gus Malzahn coaching tree. So that's what it has to do with Auburn. Bring it back full circle.
8 minutes, 50 seconds was the timestamp for those wondering. That's how long it took. No, Will's bright. No, in all seriousness, Kenny Dillingham, I mean, he's a guy who he's only 34 years old, and he has really galvanized a program that, like you mentioned, Will, I mean, this is a program that could have walked through, and no pun intended, the desert for quite a while. Like with what was going on, the infractions that were being placed on them, like this is really cool to see. It's an upstart coach. I mean, look, hey, I'm not going to say any names publicly. I know one's watching the show right now because he texted me, but we were in that press conference room and we were talking about what if LSU finds that $61 million, who would you want to go after? Someone said Kenny Dillingham. Why not? Bring him to Baton Rouge. I was like, okay, like, all right, interesting. But in all seriousness, he's done a great job. And I think that you talk about, I remember watching some of his press conferences last year, Will, and he just said, like, we're kind of getting it handed to us, in terms of his, his first year there. He had gotten there late. They had a lot of turnover in terms of roster, but you see what a young, vibrant coach can do in terms of relating with players. hitting in the portal, developing relationships, internal development. Like they've got an outside shot to make the playoff. And I think if you're an Arizona State fan, you got to be like, good Lord, 2 years ago? Like if you're a student, and let's say your freshman year was Herm Edwards last year, and now I guess you're a junior or senior, like you're probably sitting there like, huh? Like what is this? Like it's kind of a crazy turnaround, but I'm with you, man. I don't know if they're the best team, but they definitely have a chance to prove that on the field this week.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of talk this weekend about the Big 12, but we've said it all year. It's maybe top to bottom the most competitive conference in the country, and it's showing. I mean, two teams that were expected to not even make a bowl game are sitting at number 1 and number 3 in the conference standings right now, and play for essentially a spot in the conference title game on Saturday. So that's Big 12. It's fun. It's right below the Fun Belt in terms of fun, and we'll get to talk about the Fun Belt. But it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
The pain
Shout
belt.
out South Alabama. Shout out South Alabama.
Yeah, shout out South Alabama for taking out UL's quarterback.
Yeah, Ralph. Any thoughts though on
we don't root for injuries.
Yeah.
Well, I agree.
Well, Ralph does when it comes to South Alabama, but obviously.
Will and I watched that Arizona State game 2 weeks ago when they wore the Pat Tillman jerseys
against UCF.
Against UCF, and we have to say that that's probably the best time for a team to wear a uniform.
Clarify. Will's Big 12 champion. UCF.
Yes, well,
that is correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hey,
and
my
picked
Big
them to
12
win 8
champion
games.
is out of view now. But
Georgia Tech plays your ACC champion this week.
Yeah, well,
they
do.
Thursday night.
Oh, ACC. I thought you said
ACC.
SEC.
I apologize. Yeah. Anyways, Ralph,
I want to say this: the Big 12 has really flipped over than what we predicted it to be.
Yeah,
we thought Oklahoma State was the favorite to win, with either Utah behind them. Will had UCF. Some people I said Texas Tech. Top, you have BYU, Colorado, Arizona State, Iowa State, Baylor. Just no one really thought those teams had a chance. And Will is correct. This is probably the most competitive conference throughout the whole entire conference. Besides Oklahoma State hasn't won a game yet. Arizona State, Sam Leavitt obviously had a great game Saturday. They had a great first half. Blew the brakes off Kansas State in the first half. And they hit they slowed back on the gas pedal a little bit in the second half. Sometimes hurts you, sometimes won't. They got lucky at the end. They didn't get, they didn't make a comeback in the second half. But, going forward, Arizona State's a problem to face. Cam Scatterbo probably going to come back another year. Levitt's only a freshman, the redshirt freshman. It's crazy.
He's awesome. No, I like what you said. I mean, he's and he was out for a game. You mentioned the quarterback was out for a game. They had to play Jeff Sims, and they won that game. And so I think it's just like when you look at this Big 12 conference, you mentioned there, Ralph, like Utah and Oklahoma State are a combined 1-13 in conference play. Like, is that not crazy? Like, I mean, it showed you it's wild. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, the one conference win is Utah, and I'm pretty sure that wins over Oklahoma State, if I'm not mistaken.
It might be, yeah, because that was the battle of the geriatrics at quarterback.
Yeah,
the hashtag Indeed get a jobs.
Indeed.
No, I like what you said. Ralph, you want me to tell you something though? Do you want to hear that Texas Tech still has a path to reach the Big 12 title game?
Oh, I mean, dude,
six-way tie.
You don't have 6-way tie. They also pull names out of a hat.
West Virginia also has a they lost and they still have a path, which is just nuts. No, I like it, Will. That's a good takeaway. Arizona State, they're definitely on the up. They're definitely up. And I like to see that. We need some teams out west representing so we can watch some late games that mean something. I'm with you. All right. Ralph, you want to go next? And I think I can help you out here a little bit too.
I got you. I'm going Florida can play spoiler this weekend. Ole Miss coming off a bye week, a very much needed bye week for this team. You get Trey Harris back. Watching game day on Saturday, Kirk Herbstreit, Tim Tebow both said that this is probably their number one team in the SEC right now was Ole Miss. A lot of people had LSU still up there. Florida took them to town and at home.
Who? I want to know who had LSU up there.
There you go. That man over there.
I have officially sold all my.
That's who had.
You're still pointing the wrong way.
Not on my screen, I'm not. Not on my screen, I'm not. So that's sorry.
I've officially sold all my Garrett Nussmeier stock. I'm out.
Either way, this is a tough road environment. No matter what time of day you're playing, no matter who you are. Bryce, you saw it in person. Place is rocking. You give them just a little bit of hope. It's crazy. And LSU struggled throughout the entire game to throw the ball, to run the ball. Caden Durham, I still think he's one of the best players on that roster, just not given much opportunities to run the ball.
Well, the staff certainly doesn't know that.
Yeah, well, shocker. But Florida, with Lagway fully healthy, I feel like now, I think you saw him Saturday, balled out. I mean, absolutely balled out. He looked like looked comfortable back there against a pretty veteran defense, for the most part, Bryce.
They're terrible.
I agree, but veteran-wise, they are.
They're about to graduate. That is a very good way to put it.
Look, Jaden Bowell is how you say it? Florida running back? I think.
Kid's good.
Yeah, true freshman running back, true freshman quarterback. This team just beat LSU at home. Ole Miss comes to town. They need to win this game. It's 12 o'clock kickoff. Florida can spoil Ole Miss's playoff opportunities on Saturday. I'm not giving full, that Florida wins straight up, but Florida's going to make this a tough battle. If I remember correctly, when Florida and Ole Miss played, when Tim Tebow was undefeated, and Ole Miss came to Gainesville and beat them, and Tim Tebow said that he would never lose again in his career. This has that same kind of situation at 12 o'clock kickoff, Ole Miss, Florida in Gainesville. It's just going to be a gruesome battle, I feel like. Florida's defense is very well coached, got some really good players in that defense. I can see just something crazy happening in Gainesville. Florida needs a win to get to a bowl game. They get Florida State at the end of the year. They're probably going to wax Florida State because they're god-awful. So I'll say this. I really like what Florida's doing. Billy Napier has bought this fan base back and is prepared to open up some big wins next few years coming.
I mentioned this, Ralph, and I think you kind of alluded to it there. I was talking to some of the media after the game, and I think it's an interesting crossroads that we may have seen. And I'm speculating, but I'm not saying anything for a fact here. But, when you look at how programs take off in one direction and other programs start to decline, I just wondered, is there a chance we look back at Saturday's game between Florida and LSU and we sit there and say, that was the moment where they're 4-5 coming into the game. It would be really easy for the fan base not to show up, but man, they packed the stadium out. They showed up, they showed out, and they just got a massive win against a big-time rival. Is that the start of, you would assume they're going to beat Florida State, so they're going to go to a bowl game in a year where I think all three of us and a lot of people were kind of sitting there, saying, I don't even know if he makes it to the week of Tennessee in terms of what they're going to be able to do. Is this where Florida takes off? And then I can talk about LSU to a certain extent. Is this where we start to see LSU really fall off and things become even more discombobulated? Could we look in 2 years where Billy Napier has Florida winning 8 to 9 games a season, and maybe Brian Kelly's not the coach of LSU, and we can point back to, remember that night in Gainesville when the place was rocking? And to your point, Ralph, the one thing, and I was asking some Florida fans walking into the stadium, like, what's the vibe? And they kept saying over and over again, it's not been pretty, but the players still believe. And I think that shows you, like, when it's in an era where we've had, 3 head coaches fired today? 2 head coaches fired today at very least. Biff Poggi was fired. In the day and age of such quick turnover, it shows, like, if your locker room's still intact, man, it's hard to let go of a guy. And obviously there's the money factor and all that kind of stuff too, but this is a massive win. And I think a lot of it was due to, yes, Ralph, they have great players. Shamar James is a good football player. Ralph figured out the hard way about 3 hours ago when he picked him off against Texas Tech in EA College Football 25. That being said, he's a good football player. They've got isolated talent, but man, when you combine playing cohesive football and then playing with that crowd, and one thing I wanted to get to right here is, you talk about a team, guys, that's 4-5. Well, keep that in mind. And this place is rocking. This is, you talk about, like, this isn't normal. The fan base engaged like this, and you see, the team showing out. You can't really see it here, but the team singing along, and we're posting the hype video afterwards about it. Like, I just thought this was something that was really important to watch and the big reason why they had success. So I like Billy Napier. I think this is a win that could catapult them into some serious success going forward. I'm not saying they're going to go win the SEC next year, but they believe. And to your point, Ralph, like that matters a lot.
Yeah. Especially right now in this era of coaches kind of coming and going, honestly, these days. I mean, some of these coaches get, they get 3 or 4 years to build a program and they don't do it, they're gone. This is Napier's third year, correct?
Napier's third season. Yeah.
Third season.
He and Kelly were hired the same offseason.
And obviously, if some people were to compare the two coaches, Brian Kelly obviously is way ahead. But for right now, what matters right now, Billy Napier is ahead. He's got a fan base that's bought into this what he's doing. He's got a quarterback of the future.
So
he's
good.
bringing in. He just signed another. He's got another quarterback commit today. He got a 4-star Florida State flip yesterday or this morning, whatever it was. He's building up this recruiting class for the future. They're gonna be good. You see some of the freshman talent on the field right now. Just wait till a year or two when they're developed a little more. Good grief, this team's and they're going to hit the portal hard this offseason. They're going to be good next year. This is a good team developing right now.
And I wanted to, before I throw it to Will here too, it's been publicly reported their NIL investment is in the freshmen and sophomores. So if you would have plucked a coach out of that situation, you might have to you'd be maybe looking at another 2-3 year rebuild. And so look, I think you would have really started to hit a cycle where Florida's already been in if we're just hiring and firing coaches. And credit, I mean, I know it looked really bad last week, and we're looking within the microcosm of a week, but that's a big win. If they would have, gotten out of there,
one of the best teams in the country in Texas a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I mean, their schedule's brutal.
Yeah, it's one more thing. I want to hear what you got to say. Also, is Graham Mertz paved the way for this team for just getting through the tough part of the season, beginning of the year. Obviously, going down with an unfortunate injury. But you can see that he still has a lot of work he's done with Lagway this offseason, and right now, helping him on the sidelines, helping him in practice and in the locker room. They talk about it. Graham Mertz is a leader on this team still, and it's helped Lagway become who he is.
Well, before you go, DJ Lagway is going to be the quarterbacks of the future are going to be nasty in the SEC. Between him and Nico, it's filthy. But yeah, your thoughts?
Hey, Walker White got a quarter. Don't forget about him. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No, just real quick on Florida, and then I want to use this to segue into our SEC discussion because there's been a lot of talk about the SEC today. I think we should talk about it. But Florida, we all knew that they had the talent, right? But we saw that schedule. We knew the inexperience. We thought maybe a little bit of upheaval in that locker room, and they were going to really struggle. But I think they proved everybody wrong just by sticking together and sticking it out. And then you plug in a playmaker like that. I've talked about it in a bunch of games. In the SEC, you have to have a playmaker at quarterback. They have that with DJ Lagway. Graham Mertz is a good quarterback. He does good things. He's not the playmaker that DJ Lagway is, and I think that's where you're seeing the difference. And Lagway does it with his feet, does it with his arm. Made I can't remember which one of them touchdown passes. The
one he flicked. I don't know. Yeah. There was one. It wasn't a touchdown, but he got him down to the 1 yard line. They scored the next play. He steps up in the pocket, and remember, he's hurt. He's about 60 to 70%.
It was like throwing on the run. Yeah. He's an incredible talent. But that video you showed of the Florida fans rocking at 4 and 5. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring it back to Auburn. 2 years ago, the Auburn-Texas A&M game, similar vibe, but Auburn even in a worse position, and Jordan-Hare Stadium was rocking. I think that is more common than people want to say because that's the SEC. Yeah, and everybody makes fun of the SEC's moniker. It just means more. That's what they're talking about. That's what they mean when it just means more. Stuff like that. Auburn 2 years ago, the worst season in Auburn football I've ever seen. And Auburn packs it out and goes and beats a team that they had no business beating. I think that happens week in and week out in the SEC. The fans in the SEC do not give up on their team. The commitment in the SEC is bigger than anywhere else in the country. And you want to talk about SEC bias in rankings or playoff, whatever. It's because SEC people are more bought in than anybody else, and they commit and make a bigger commitment than anybody else, and they put together teams and rosters to compete and win national championships. All 16 teams are working toward that. You can say that now, that all 16 teams are working toward that. You see what Clark Lee's done at Vanderbilt. There's no doubt in my mind that he's serious about it, and Vanderbilt is getting more serious about it. They've got different limitations, but they're not using it as an excuse in that program anymore, and they're getting better. Every single program is working to get better and making the commitment, and they don't do that everywhere else. Even in the Southeast, different conferences, they don't do it everywhere else. When you have that kind of buy-in and the leadership at the top, and I'll get on Greg Sankey and the SEC leadership later on in the show and talk bad about them, but when you have that at the top, it goes through to everybody, and everybody's going to try, and all the fans are going to be bought in. Everybody loves it. It doesn't happen everywhere else.
I have the play wheel that
and Jonesy, I'm not going to throw up your comment, but here you go. You shouldn't be surprised.
It's okay. We got something coming for Will that'll debate that. But yes, anyways.
Yeah, that's
ridiculous.
That's insane.
Like, I want you to watch. Pause it right here, Ralph. Well, I don't know. We can't. It's okay. If you go back, Braden Swinson, who is top 10 in the country in sacks, by the way. Like, this is not just some dude off the edge. He gets him
ran
up
right by the left tackle.
Yeah, left tackle cheeks, portal. See you later. But, and he just shrugs it off. This guy's 6'4", 6'5". He's 240 pounds. And he played on one leg. Like, it's just crazy. But he slung that thing. Will, I wanted to touch on something real quick, and then before we segue into the SEC, because I've obviously got an SEC takeaway, because we like to ride the SEC. But it is, in all seriousness, to your point with Vanderbilt, I was talking with somebody, and they said, here's the thing about Vanderbilt people don't really know. Vanderbilt this past offseason, they brought in, I know we've joked about it, Jerry Kill. They brought in a lot of people, and Clark Lee surrounded himself. And I've been told that Clark Lee essentially said, look, we've got to do things different. If we keep recruiting at the high school level, we're going to get poached. Their top 2 receivers got poached last year. They essentially said we have to hit on guys in the portal that are looking to make that jump, that want to compete in this conference. And they've hit. Like, yeah, they're not going to – they may not – you talk about it's not about are you winning a championship. It's are you striving to do that. I think Vanderbilt has said, you know what, we can't do it the way Georgia and Alabama do it. We've got to come up with another way and hope we catch lightning in a bottle one year. And to me, that's true. I love it. Maxwell says TCB to the SEC. Ugh, fine. That is amazing. God, that is creative right there. I don't know. That's to me, to your point, I agree with it wholeheartedly. We're not saying that every single team is capable of going out and winning a title. We're not saying that Kentucky could go beat Penn State. What we're telling you is that there's a commitment from top to bottom that if it doesn't get done, there's going to be money poured in to fix the problem nearly immediately. And so other teams might be able to catch a great coach within a span of, however long, but they might settle. I just don't feel like SEC teams are willing to settle. Maybe some programs, but like Kentucky has settled in terms of Mark Stoops, but that's a different conversation.
I was going to use Kentucky as an example to your point. They had one of the best college basketball coaches of all time, and they let him walk. They stayed committed to football, or renewed a commitment to football, and that upset John Calipari, so he left.
Yeah, and now he's at a place where they're going to do that again. I don't know. No, that's a good point. That is a good point. I want to let me get to this point that we're going to talk playoff, and we'll really talk SEC, because here's another SEC team, guys, and I'm just going to say it. If you got to rank, if you got to rank teams in terms of the current way they're playing, this is a top 10 team in the country. Beamer ball is rolling. It's rolling. South Carolina is very good. And you're starting to see, and I talked about this, I told LSU fans this, we shouldn't have been in that game. We should have beat the crap out of them. It's an NFL front seven. Kyle Kennard has transferred. He took the risk reward that guys want to take by jumping in the SEC, and it's paid off immensely for that young man. Like, he went from a guy who he might be a 4th, 5th round pick and whatever, to he legitimately might be a 2nd round pick, and the difference in money's ridiculous. You have a guy on the other edge in Dylan Stewart, who they're already offering
first-round
NIL and
pick.
building. I mean, Dylan Stewart's a 1-1 type of player when he can come out. That's what he is, depending on need. You obviously have a great interior, what they do there. You've got nice pieces. If you don't really pay attention, South Carolina constantly has NFL corners. Like, go and look at how many corners they have. They've constantly guys that just, oh yeah, that's a pretty good player, and then he's somewhere and he's in the NFL and as a second round pick. You also have seen, and the biggest part of this, and look, we had him on the show
Where's
back
our
in the spring.
Panthers fan? Our Panthers fans not commenting.
Yeah, J.C. Horn, dude.
J.C.
Where's
Horn.
Gavin? Where's Gavin, our Panthers fan?
J.C. Horn's a good one. One thing that I think was the biggest growth, and could they make the jump, was you've seen, and because people just get so out on team. Week 3, well, they're terrible. No, teams are allowed to evolve. Lenoris Sellers' growth this season from straight athlete to quarterback, it has been a tremendous amount of their growth as an offense. Rocket Sanders, I mean, Ralph talked about this, and if Rocket Sanders can capture what he had 2 years ago in Fayetteville, he's going to help out immensely. They've got that. They've got some young receivers. Nick Harbor has learned to catch the football. That's awesome. I mean, in certain things, they really have grown, and I think it's a great snapshot of, like, they're playing their best football at the right time. And they suffered, they're you can play the if-then game all you want. If 6 plays go either way, they could be a one-loss team. I mean, they could be 9-1. So to me, I love what South Carolina has done. It shows you that you can't judge a team based off of what they do through 4 weeks. You need the whole data point. Shane Beamer, to me, and look, we had him on the show, and I wonder if he would agree with this. He has grown as a coach. I feel like he has matured as a coach as well. So I love what Shane Beamer and South Carolina have done. I think they're one of the hottest teams in college football right now. I think that they have a lot going for them. They've got recruiting momentum. They've got all certain types of things that when you look about what you want, they are a program that is trending in the right direction within the SEC. And how competitive this conference is now, I think that's something you want to take away. And so when Beamer goes into, Holmes this, around signing day to make sure that he's good on commitments, when he calls and they get on the phone with, transfer guys in the 48-hour window you have to get them to commit, that's what you can say. Hey, it's not about what we can be. We're getting there, and we want you to come along for the ride. And now you've got data points, and I love what South Carolina has done. It's one of my favorite programs to watch this year. I love Shane Beamer, ultimate round of respect for him, and they're fun to watch. They play. Beamer talked about this in his post-game presser. Cole Kublik does kind of a rundown of like different teams, and I thought this was unique. He said South Carolina's playing a brand of football. They've got great talent individually, but like we talked about Florida for one game last weekend, they've started playing cohesive together and using that together, and I think that is massive in terms of where they want to go. So I'll let either one of you take it. Beamer ball's rolling. South Carolina's very good. It'll be interesting to see what kind of bowl game they end up in, because I mean, this is a team who could win 10 games this year. I mean, they very well could win 10 games, go 9-3, win a bowl game, and be 10-3. Now, I mean, they got to play Clemson. That's going to be a tough game. I believe that game's in Clemson, but it's not. It's not.
A 12 o'clock kickoff in Clemson.
Yeah, last time they did that, they won. So, so I don't know. Will, I'll let you have this one first. What are your thoughts on South Carolina and just the growth that we've seen them over the past month? I mean, they've been just about as good as you can be.
I think if they had Lenoris Sellers with another year of development on this year's team, they'd be a playoff team, hands down. Because you saw early in the year that LSU game, that Alabama game.
Remember, he got hurt in that game too. So he
got hurt, and he was really struggling at that part of the year to consistently hit on his passes.
Yeah.
In these last couple of weeks, he's really been hitting on them, and they've been nearly unstoppable offensively between his legs, Rocket Sanders, and him being able to throw the ball. You talked about Nick Carver stepping up, all those receivers stepping up and catching the ball. I mean, they're a force to be reckoned with. I wouldn't want to see them coming up on the schedule. They're hot, and before the season, we laughed at people that said Beamer would be fired just because some people don't understand the landscape and understand the situations in different programs.
Yeah.
But regardless, they have far exceeded expectations this season. I mean, even if say Saturday they couldn't have orchestrated that last minute drive to beat Missouri, if they maybe would have dropped that game to Vanderbilt, which South Carolina teams in the past have dropped games like that off of big wins.
Mm-hmm.
Seen it a lot the last 10, 15 years from South Carolina. They didn't. They still would have passed nearly anybody's expectations of them this year. They have been really, really good, and I'm really interested to see, like you said, what bowl game they get to, and then kind of what that roster looks like, and can they reload and do it again next year?
Yeah, I mean, you've got Lenora Sellers, and you talked about having a quarterback, Ralph. Like DJ Lagway is going to be that beacon of light for anybody who wants to come play at Florida. Lenora Sellers and Dylan Stewart. Like, you've got legit quarterback number one on your team, and you've got a premier edge rusher. Like, you've got the framework. So, Ralph, what's your opinion? 5.5, by the way, preseason win total for the Gamecocks. So
yeah, I mean, you look what they've done recently. I mean, they took that loss to Alabama, and then a game where you can play the if factor. Bryce is if a certain thing goes their way, they probably win that game. But what Beamer's doing there at South Carolina right now is massive. This year was really the year that needed to take a step forward, because we saw a great year. 2021 was the best year, or 2022 was the year they
beat Tennessee and Clemson.
Yeah, back to back. We thought the jump was going to come after that year, and the following year their offensive line was terrible. People blame Spencer Rattler, which you come to the conclusion that Rattler was not the problem. It was really just he had no O-line, no help. And then you bring in, Lenora Sellers, you mean the starter quarterback, you bring in Rocket Sanders, Kyle Kennard, Dylan Stewart's a true freshman. They've signed a 5-star the last 2 years, and being Nick Harvard 2 years ago, and now it's Dylan Stewart. This team's going in the right direction, just like I said with Florida earlier. Billy Everett's done a great job there. Beamer's doing a really good job in South Carolina, and this is the guy that you can get behind. You can stand. He's a likable guy. He's a friend of the program. Maxwell said it earlier. That's why we like him as much, honestly. We would have been like the same guy who said that he was going to get fired at the beginning of the year.
Dr. Bob says, and Bryce got Shane Beamer on the show, so as South Carolina rises, so does the Crowder booth.
Shane Beamer is the guy that if he's the coach of your team, you love him. If he's not, you hate him.
You hate him because
but South Carolina needs that. Like that, Steve Spurrier-esque. I'm not saying he's Steve Spurrier, but that's how Spurrier was viewed.
He kind of reminds me of Will Muschamp in ways of how he coaches. In ways how he coaches. He's very fired up on the sideline. But
South Carolina fan just dipped out of this clip right here because
I'm talking about in intensity, not his coaching ways. He's not. He tries to be. He works really well with his players. You see a lot of off-season film of him. They have like giant team hide and seek throughout the facilities. They do these funny FaceTime calls with the players. He does a great job of working with his team. The players fully are in support of him. You see down the field and how hard they work. A game against Missouri, which few plays almost didn't go their way and almost lost the game. They fought to the end. Rocket Sanders obviously taking that 25-yard run to the end zone where he just ran over 2 people in Missouri, hit the weight room guys. But look, Beamer, this is going to be a good team next year and a good team going forward.
I like him. I like Shane Beamer. And I think, like you said, Will, in terms of expectations, I was talking with someone at SEC Media that said it would have to be like 2-10, 3-9 for them to fire him. You just have to understand the landscape and the expectations and who are you going to get that's going to inject energy into the program like he has and back it up.
Jared Parker.
Ralph, nobody. Gavin says, hopped out of my bed, turned my swag on, took a look in the mirror, said, yeah, what's up? Yeah, I'm getting money. Oh, I hopped out of the bed, turned my swag on, took a look in the mirror, said, yeah, what's up? I know Will has no clue what that is.
I don't know what that is.
It's the viral clip with Shane Beamer 2 years ago. You don't know the song "Turn My Swag On"? That's unfortunate. All right, Ralph, let's take a quick break. When we do come back, you let them know about Dr. Squatch as we get closer to holiday time here, Christmas time. Why did I say holiday time? Christmas time.
Happy holidays.
Happy.
Your soap is ugh, and your body wash is a synthetic detergent. But you're not a dish. You're a man. Switch to Dr. Squatch Natural Soap for Men. For men who build things. Open pickle jars on the first try. Slay dragons. And let their daughters braid their hair. Men who like to feel good and smell. Titillating. Dr. Squatch takes you places you never thought you'd go. Naked.
Make sure you use code Bryce Koon to get $10 off your first $20 purchase. And hey, they've got some nice scents as we get close to Christmas time. All right, fellas, we've got about 20 minutes left because I know Will and I don't want to talk about our best bets, but we'll take a look at it, obviously. Let's talk playoff. And Will, I kind of think this is where you were going because a lot of discussion in the Discord, there's a lot of discussion across college football that there's just this SEC bias. And I wanted to kick it off with this. You know, tomorrow night we're going to see these rankings come out. I've lost faith in the AP poll. I don't know what it means. I mean, all this stuff. But I wanted to kind of state my opinion on tonight's show because it's hard to do that over text in terms of the Discord. I think there can be two things true at once. I believe the SEC is far and away the deepest and most competitive conference in college football. I think that there's select teams in other conference that are that are also very good. I also think that strength of schedule and who you have played should matter. I have a problem with Texas being as high as they have due to, you know, who they have played and who they've beaten. I mean, their best win's Vanderbilt at this point.
They ain't played nobody, Paul.
I also have a problem with Penn State being in the conversation for we don't even know why they're in the conversation other than the logo on the lack of a logo on a helmet. Indiana, it's a cool story, but just because you're a cool story doesn't mean that, you know, you should be above said teams. I think we're entering a time, and, you know, we had some people in the Discord, and I didn't even fully disagree with them. The expansion of the playoff is what has caused this. And this is one of the reasons. I will tell you this. When December 21st comes around, and I want to take this pin and jab it through Palmer Thombs's neck because he gets to make a trip to Happy Valley and I don't. When that happens, we're all going to sit in front of the TV and watch like that. Let's get that out of the way. We're all going to watch. Well, Ralph won't because he's working, but, you know, we'll all sit down and we'll watch it. But the thing for me is you have to realize the 12-team playoff ruined this in terms of what else did you expect? Everyone catered to wanting the G5 to get a team in and wanting that Penn State that, though they were almost good enough, but they never could quite do it to get in. But did you not really think that this was going to open the door for the Tier 2 SEC teams to load up? What do you think is going to happen when they get to 16 teams? This is what this is. And the SEC and the Big Ten hold all the power in what you want to do. It's why we said from the beginning, I expect an eventual breakaway or an eventual just, you can do what you're going to do, but we're not participating in this Super League. And without us, you really don't have a Super League type of conversation. So this is what this has caused. The SEC, to me, in my opinion, is far and away the best conference, not because of logo, but because of a different caliber of athlete, the buy-in in turn to what you talked about, all these different things that make it more competitive week in to week out. When this playoff rankings is released, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, there's going to be a 2-loss SEC team that is going to be left out, not just now, but when the final playoff rankings are released. We have Ralph, give me a word that goes with fire. I know you're so much into arson. What would be a word? We've incited. We'll go with that. It's become incendiary. Like in terms of this is about to blow up. We've blown out of proportion this whole idea that, well, it's going to be the 12 most deserving teams based off of what? Like what is the groundwork based off of? And people brought up great points, like go back to computers. People brought up great points that, you know, you could do this and that. My take is that if you want the 12 best teams, you might not like it, but there's going to be 4, maybe 5 SEC teams in this thing. That you not liking it doesn't make it not true. And that's just where we sit at that. I mean, I don't know how else to paint this picture for people other than the fact of like, and I'm not also trying to pull the card of like, well, you're not on the games, you're not on the sideline, you can't see the athletes. I do get that opportunity, and I'm thankful for that opportunity. There is a difference. There just is a difference when you watch these games. It's a different, if you believe that watching Virginia and Boston College play is the same, and I'll even give you one, is the same as watching Kentucky play Florida, I mean, it's just not. Like it's not the same thing. So it's hard to compare all these things. I will agree with that. So that's a lot of different thoughts. Y'all can take it where you want to go from here.
Bryce, I got a good example for you, and nobody's gonna want to hear this, but I saw it firsthand in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. the athletes that Notre Dame has compared to Georgia Tech and the rest of the ACC. It's just far different. It's just far different. And, and the thing is about the SEC and the Big Ten, and this is to the point that I was wanting to, hinted at earlier. Sorry, Ralph, that I know you were concerned. You were concerned at me trying to spit that out. They are trying to get as many teams in the playoff as possible. And, I'm not to say that's a bad thing. It's good for business. But you look at these other conferences, they have to push all the chips in on one team.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the officiating in the games for Miami. The Cal game, the Virginia Tech game. Yeah. The Louisville game had some questionable calls in the second half as they got into a shootout there. They had to push all their chips in on one team because they probably will only get one team in the playoff. The Big 12, same way, has to do that too. And my point earlier, the Georgia Tennessee game, they flashed a graphic before the game that told me exactly how the game was going to be officiated. They showed both teams' percentage to make the playoff with a win and with a loss. Tennessee with a loss, they still gave them about, I think it was a 53% chance to make the playoff. Georgia with a 12% chance. Now, if you watch that game, there was, to me, a clear tilt in how the game was officiated. Now, not to say that that's why Tennessee lost the game. I don't think that, Bryce. We were texting about that today.
Yeah.
I don't think that's why Tennessee lost the game.
It plays it back.
Georgia flat outplayed them in the second half. I mean, you have to admit that too. Now, Georgia did get a lot of the calls, which helped them extend drives, put up points, and hurt Tennessee. But it's like I said about if you want to make your team, if you want to make the playoffs, just play better, win your games. The great teams can overcome that kind of stuff, and I think Tennessee is a great team. I think they are a playoff team, and I think that they are good enough, maybe on a different night, to overcome those calls that don't go their way. But the SEC is doing what's best for the SEC and trying to get as many teams in as possible. They say if Georgia wins, we can get both of these teams in. If Tennessee wins, we may only get Tennessee, and that's going to cost us another team. But these other conferences, they don't have that luxury. Your ACC, your Big 12, your Group of 5 conferences.
The Big 12 is only getting one in. I mean, that's
right. That's what I'm saying.
Only getting one in, yeah, and probably the ACC too.
Probably. Maxwell says, so CFB playoffs is WWE confirmed. I mean, we've said that for several years.
It's ridiculous.
It's whatever ESPN wants. And last thing, and then I'll hand it off to Ralph. Bryce, you talk about bringing back computers. We might as well, because and Kirby Smart said it after the game, I don't know if the committee watches any of these games. To me, it looks to me like they just look at box scores and say, well, that's Georgia. We know how good they've been lately, so let's rank them here. Let's rank them. And I think it was the AP poll. They probably do the same thing. They had Georgia ranked ahead of Ole Miss. Ole Miss just beat Georgia by 2 touchdowns. Double digits. I mean, it is very subjective. That was a word that was thrown around in the Discord a lot today.
It is.
Rankings are objective. And, that's part of it. But, if they watch the games or if they have a clear criteria, which was Kirby Smart's whole argument, we need clear criteria. I want to bring up Sam Kim's comment. Look at the committee members, coaches and players. It's not an easy job. It's not an easy job, but look who's on the committee. You've got sitting athletic directors from different conferences. There's a lot of it. There's just a lot of inherent biases all over the place. Officiating, playoff committee. There's biases everywhere. You can't get rid of them. And that's why I say to make the playoff is pretty simple. I said it in the Discord. Win all your games. It's hard to do, but if you win all your games, they're unless you're Florida State, they're probably not going to leave you out.
Yeah. Ralph, I want you to follow up on this, but I also wanted to throw in this question because we'll hit on something there about Ole Miss Okay. Ole Miss beats Georgia. They do what they need to do. They do what everyone asked them to do. They do what they had to do to stay alive in the playoff race. At what point do we just flat out say, what is the criteria? Is it wins? Is it how you looked, recency bias, like how you recently looked? Is it who would be favored? I mean, I just don't think that I agree with Kirby Smart. I have no clue what the criteria is. And I know they keep coming out with some graphic every single year that tells us, but it doesn't feel like it adheres to anything because, like Will said, I mean, if Georgia's ranked above Ole Miss tomorrow, what was the point of Ole Miss playing Georgia? Like what was the point of that? So I don't know. To your point, Ralph, like, I mean, what is this? I know that's a loaded question, and I know you don't have the answer, but like, where do you draw the line and just say either wins matter or they don't? But also, you have to understand that not every single win is weighed equally. That's another big thing. The SEC, and not all losses are either. You can't just say, well, they lost to so-and-so. Well, they lost to the number 1, 2 team in the country. They lost to the number 3 team in the country. So
the best example for that is Ole Miss right now. They lost to Kentucky, yes. They lost to LSU on the road, yes. They beat Georgia. And that's part of the criteria for Ole Miss right now is that they have a win against Georgia. They don't play Tennessee this year.
Beat South Carolina on the road.
But they beat the brakes off the team that beat Tennessee on the road. They beat the brakes off South Carolina on the road. Ole Miss has done everything they possibly could besides win the two losses they have to make the playoffs. To answer about your criteria, though, the best example is for Florida State last year. Because, look, undefeated ACC champs, they lose their quarterback in a horrible injury. 2 games left in the season. They pull out an undefeated season, and they get knocked out of the playoffs because they don't have a quarterback.
Yeah.
That's part of the criteria, apparently. And in the rules, and you read it, I don't know if that was there beforehand, if they added it right when Florida State didn't get in. Because I can tell you right now, there's not a single person that watches this show, that watches Indian college football, that read through every single college football playoff rule and said that was there from the get-go. The impact players have to be playing that game. There's no way you knew that. That was thrown in there because of Florida State not having their quarterback toward the end of the year. And I hate it because, and Dr. Bob brings a good comment, Bryce, is that Oklahoma did beat Tulane early year. Tulane had a struggle in the first half, made an insane comeback in the second half, and just could not get close enough to win that game. Does not mean Tulane is a bad team. Oklahoma's had a rough year. Tulane is very good. They are very well coached. They just beat the crap out of Navy over the weekend.
Yeah, Dr. Bob, very confident.
Went through Navy and beat these
already crowning Tulane. Very confident.
Well, we're going to talk G5 here in just a second because I don't want to get at that. But
he's 3-0 as a head coach against military teams. Just saying.
He's the ultimate military.
And he's played Army. He's coached against Army twice.
Hey,
and
Army's going to beat Notre Dame in Yankee Stadium on Saturday.
I hope so. I surely hope so. We can get rid of this Notre Dame talk.
Army plays Notre Dame on Saturday.
In Auburn is going to beat Notre Dame. I was like, what?
No, Navy or Army.
That would be more fun to watch.
I want to talk G5 here, but I want to get to this last point right here. Everything that we laid out, I feel is true. The problem with everything
man can dream, Dr. Bob. A man can dream.
The problem with what we just said here is that there's people who are like, why, when other conferences struggle or beat up on each other, do they not get the same love that the SEC gets? Well, here's the thing. Did you see what I showed you about 30 minutes ago in that environment? Do you see the caliber of athlete that is playing in this conference?
Look at recruiting rankings.
Do you see the amount of draft picks that come out of this conference? Even some of the worst teams are producing. I'm not going to sit, like I said, to start this segment off, I'm not sitting here telling you that Mississippi State would go beat Ohio State. That's asinine. That's crazy. That's full SEC homerism. But when Virginia struggles to beat Boston College, it doesn't look the same when Mississippi State and Auburn play each other, and we can make jokes about it. It's a different level. It's a different level.
I'm going to use an ACC team. None of the ones we talk about normally, but you mentioned it a minute ago. Virginia is sitting at 5-5 right now. If they played a home game against Virginia Tech on Saturday, it would not be the same crowd Florida hosting Florida State on a Saturday night. If you put both those games on a Saturday night, they will not have the same amount of crowd. They will not have the same amount. It would not be as it would not be even close to the same environment that Florida would have. And I'm just using those two ranges because Virginia's the same record right now at 5-5. I can go to the Big 12. Use the same thing. The only team in the Big 12
nobody would even know Virginia Tech are playing. It'll be on the ACC network.
The only team in the Big 12, in my opinion, that have a chance of hosting a good environment year in, year out, no matter what record, is BYU.
Yeah, but that's because it's so. You realize that it's because it's so unique.
Yeah, that's the only reason why. That's the only reason why. That's what I'm trying to say.
And people can keep saying, "Well, this and that." It's because you don't like it, and you not liking something doesn't make it not true. And I'm serious. I have yet to see. I've yet to see a actual argument against it, like an actual argument against it, because. Like when Miami, here's a perfect example. When Miami's loss to Georgia Tech is going to keep them out of the playoff if they don't win the ACC title. And I'm still standing here that you could have a 3-loss SEC runner-up that could make it. And people say, well, why? Because Georgia Tech is not viewed as a legitimate threat in terms of environment, in terms of all that. It doesn't matter if you were there. It is the perception. And oftentimes perception is reality. And that is what has happened in college football. You may not like it. That's just the way it is. It's just viewed that way. And I will end it by saying this. We'll talk G5 here to round it out. It doesn't mean that myself, and I can't speak for these two guys, that we like it. It's what's been created in college football. Because I do think that other teams and I do think other teams should get some grace. Not to the extent that maybe the SEC gets, because I do believe the SEC is harder, but it does feel like that there's teams outside of the SEC that have to go perfect to get there. And I don't know, that's just kind of my that's my viewpoint on it. I don't want to speak for y'all, but I did want to talk G5 here. Let's just get to it. A lot of talk because Boise State almost lost, and so there's a lot of talk where people are actually looking at that schedule.
They won by 3 touchdowns.
Well, I mean, they were trailing they pulled away late, but this
you should have they relaxed when they almost lost. They almost lost in Nevada they won by touchdown.
You know what proves my point? I'd rather watch Mercer play Alabama than watch Boise State play a full football game. Watching
Ashton Genty's fun.
Well, Genty's fun to watch. That's because you don't respect the running game. You don't respect the game the way it was designed by God to be played. You don't believe in a fullback.
You're gonna learn about fullback, trust me.
You're gonna learn fullback, son.
Notre Dame's gonna learn fullback on Saturday.
Let's get here.
It was honestly, I watched a little bit of the game, Bryce. It was a fun matchup because watching the number 1 running back and number 1 wide receiver go at it, the whole game was fun to watch. And includes a stat wise. Nick Nash leads the country in receiving yards, and Ashton Genty leads the country in rushing yards. It was a fun game to watch.
Will, what is the freshman wide receiver Simmons? What's his name?
Malcolm Simmons.
He'd be the number 1 wide receiver in the Mountain West, Ralph.
Well, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying by stat wise.
I get it. I mean, but I'm saying it's not created equally. That's to not go.
If we were all saying equal.
It's not an equal playing field. So you're trying to compare teams that are not on an equal playing field to begin with, which leads to the biases. And people think that the equal playing field's made up. It's not. It's fact and reality in terms of quality of athlete, in terms of what you're producing to the next level, and in terms of what's happening on the field and when you play outside of your conference. That's what's happening. And I will say this too. Bowl games are not an accurate representation of who is the better conference. Teams like to do that because they want to beat up on the SEC so bad. That's not what that is. Because I can guarantee you when LSU loses to Boston College in a bowl game this week, it's not because Boston College is the better team. Okay.
It shouldn't have been Thomas Castellanos. That's why.
Well, he's gone. He's out of there. All right, let's get this too, because Dr. Bob brings this, and I want to end it with this. We're running out of time. Tulane right now is a better team than Boise State. Those Big 12 refs in the K-State game could end up costing us a playoff berth. I would rather okay, Tulane has 2 losses, and it's going to be the same conversation. They've lost to 2 Power 4 teams, Oklahoma, Kansas State. I want you guys just to straight up say here, are you taking if Tulane wins the American Conference? And heck, if Army wins it and they go undefeated, who gets in? Let's play that scenario. There's a Mountain West champ, a one-loss Mountain West champ. Their only losses to the number 1 team in the country in Boise State. There's an undefeated Army with a win against Notre Dame, who's a perceived playoff team currently. And then there's Tulane, who has 2 Power 4 losses, but is arguably one of the hottest teams in college football right now and what they're able to do. And they're 11-2 because they'll have won the AAC title. So, Will, you start first. Which of those 3 teams are you picking? And I know you want to pick 2 of them, but which one would you pick to put in the playoff?
I don't know why you're asking me. You know the answer. Army.
But realistically, I mean, based
Army.
off of resume, you're taking Army.
Army.
They did win all their games.
They won all their games. Like you said, they beat Notre Dame, who's a playoff team.
They'll have beat Navy, but even though it won't count or matter.
Yeah, they'll have beat Navy. And like, you have to watch the teams play. That's why they're ranked so low, because people that are making these polls haven't watched them. Army is dominant in a lot of the games they played. I know they're not playing SEC or Big Ten teams every week, but they dominate. They've got one of the best quarterbacks in the country, but nobody wants to admit it because he runs an option offense, Bryson Daly. They are suffocating dominant defense. They win in different ways. They can outscore you, or they can make it ugly and play defense like they did against North Texas. And part of that was because they had a 16-play drive, held the ball for 10 minutes and on one drive. But they do it in different ways. And to me, they're a complete team. They can make it ugly. Dr. Bob says he doesn't see Army hanging with Notre Dame. If Army can make it ugly, which they're certainly capable of doing, that's how they want to play their games. They can beat them. And, to me, a playoff team is a team that's got to prove they can win in different ways.
Yeah.
That's why there's so many SEC teams in there. That's why there's multiple Big Ten teams in there, because they get drugged down into these ugly games by teams that don't have the depth that they do, that maybe aren't as good as them, but make it competitive and make it ugly and have to win in different ways.
Ralph?
I'm going to go Tulane, Bryce. And the reason why I'm telling you this is, talk about, you said a minute ago, they're the hottest team right now. The last 3 games is at Charlotte, home against Temple, and at Navy. They have outscored their opponents 121-9. That is allowing 3 to Charlotte, 6 to Temple, and 0 to Navy. You play Memphis at home on the 28th, 7:30 Eastern.
On Thanksgiving night.
On Thanksgiving night, they will complete the season. They will go in the American Championship. They will play Army more than likely, and they will beat Army.
That's set. It's Army.
Already set. Yeah, they will beat Army because
because
Summerall is a great coach and he knows how to scheme against a triple option. I'm not saying Bryson Daly is a bad quarterback. He's seen Bryson Daly before. That's not an issue for him. They will beat Army in the ACC in the American Championship game. And they will make the playoff game because they'll have to say that they have a better resume because of only Boise State win. And look, I love Ashton Denting. I love what he's done this year. I think he is the Heisman winner, in my opinion.
I don't think he is.
Well, it's your opinion. They don't have a quality win, in my opinion.
They don't.
And I'm saying that because is like, as much as I'd like to see, it's as cool as would be able to see a home game for a playoff game in Boise. Obviously, it's not possible because it's a 12 seed, but to see the blue field at night in the playoff game would be kind of cool to see one day. But I think they do lose a game though, Bryce. Boise State will either lose in a weird game at Wyoming next weekend, or they play Oregon State at the end of the season.
The talk about Boise State, and I wanted to get at this because Sam wanted his thing in there. The talk about Boise State getting the 4 seed is ridiculous. There's absolutely that's stupid. You don't have the resume to do that. Sam Kim says, and I'll just throw mine in there. I think it'll be Boise State that gets in, but I don't think that's the best team. I think Tulane would beat Boise State head to head. And so that's where I sit with that. Sam says SEC gets 4. Okay. Big Ten gets at least 3. ACC 1, Big 12 1, G5 1, Notre Dame 1 unless they lose. That leaves 1 spot for the 4th Big Ten team or a 5th SEC team. So it's going to come down to, and Sam, in this scenario, I'm just going to imagine, who is your 3rd ACC team or your 3rd Big Ten team? Is it Penn State or is it Indiana? Because if it's Penn State, the SEC team's getting in. Because Penn State has beaten nobody. I mean, and I know we joke about that. They've literally beaten nobody. The case would be better for Indiana being that team left out because they may, if they lose close to Ohio State this week, but because they have beaten teams into submission all year long, they've at least looked stupid impressive doing that. So, Sam, to my point, that's my question to you, Sam. If you're still in the chat, who is it? Penn State or Indiana? You're having to put up against, let's just say, a Tennessee at 10-2. I don't know. Also, too, I find it very hard. He goes, I get that, but the Big Ten will riot if they only get 2 in. Just saying, no. I think the Big Ten gets 3 in, Sam. Yeah. I'm asking, who is your 4th team? Is it Penn State or Indiana? That's what I'm asking. Because I think Indiana would have a better case as the 4th team than Penn State would. Because I don't even know what Penn State's played an empty schedule. I mean, who have they beaten? If you put them up against Tennessee, well, Tennessee's beaten Alabama, who would be a playoff team. They would have beaten Arkansas by ridiculous amounts of points. Or no, they lost Arkansas. Who else did Tennessee beat?
Florida.
Well, they just played a harder strength of schedule. There's not an SEC team with a strength of schedule ranking outside of the top 38. I mean, Indiana has a strength of schedule ranking in the hundreds.
They beat Oklahoma at Oklahoma. That counts really much more. They beat Bama.
Tennessee beat Bama. That's the big win. Who is Penn State's big win compared to that?
What's Indiana's big win?
That's what I'm saying. Indiana's big win is the fact that they just beat teams 50-7. That's the only.
He's saying if you're going to bring a 3rd Big Ten team, it had to be Indiana because they've done what they're supposed to do, and if they lose close to Ohio State and that'd be the only loss, you have to put them in there.
Sam says, by y'all's logic, Indiana and Penn State should both be left out. I don't know. I think the Big Ten's going to get 3 teams in.
The question is, do they get 4? And I don't think.
I don't know.
I think Indiana has to beat Ohio State on Saturday for them to get 4 teams.
Yeah. Safe.
Because if Indiana loses to Ohio State, they probably going to get left out. I mean, a win against Ohio State will cement them in the playoffs. And then you're,
regardless of what happens in the Big Ten.
Right. And then you're splitting hairs between Penn State and your Tennessee's, Texas A&M, Alabama, the teams that don't play for the SEC championship game.
I got this for you. The loser of the SEC championship game has 3 losses. Should they get in? I think so.
Yep.
Who is it? Who would be the 3-loss SEC champion?
Say it's Georgia. Georgia would have beaten Texas. And if it's Texas in the Big Ten, the SEC championship game, then
you lost the same team twice. Or you lost. You
split that.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I don't think you can penalize a team for going. You can't penalize a team for going to the conference title game and losing, because they reached a point. Here's why you can't do it, for 2 reasons. And Will, you've been hard on this. The first reason is you can't penalize a team for achieving something that other teams couldn't and then losing, because the other teams didn't get there. So they get to bypass it, which then in turn brings my second point. These media rights and TV people ain't going to let the conference champ runner up, because it's going to deem those games meaningless and they're going to lose out on a bunch of money.
Yeah, so if that happens, there will be no conference championship games.
Sam says, but you guys just said Penn State played nobody, Indiana get blown out. And what? I'm not saying Indiana, I'm saying Indiana's blowing teams out. So if they lose close to Ohio, okay, I don't think he's understanding what I'm saying here. Maybe we should just bring him to call on the line. if
Indiana did what Michigan did last year in the regular season, they had a weak regular season schedule until they played Ohio State.
But they've been dominant.
They beat the crap out of everybody throughout the season. Beat Ohio State at the end of the year. Won their conference. They were the sheer fact of being number one in the playoffs because they beat the teams they had to do all year long, senselessly, and then beat Ohio's the one ranked team they had to play that was actually good on their schedule. On the at home wherever it was, beat them, and then went to play in the Big Ten championship game and won there. They did what they're supposed to do. They went out. They're an automatic bid. That's an easy one. But he's saying if Indiana does the same thing, but their only losses to Ohio State and they get blown out by Ohio State, they don't have a win on the resume.
And he doesn't have a resume to be in.
If Indiana loses by 30 to Ohio State, then the Big Ten gets two teams in.
Yeah, the Big
Ten, because Indiana does not have the brand value.
By Sam's logic of saying that Penn State doesn't deserve it.
Right. Yeah. And because Indiana does not have the brand value, they don't have the track record, which unfortunately means a lot.
And they've been positioning Indiana on the back half of the top 10 anyways, so as soon as they lose, they could drop them out.
Right.
Yeah. So
which I don't agree with.
So we understand what you're saying. We were just hoping you would understand what we were saying. I get what he was trying to say.
Anthony, appreciate you. So you're saying 10 teams get in for playing in a championship game and 2 at-large bids? No. Because the SEC championship runner-up, in my opinion, will get in.
And the Big 12 runner-up.
I don't think the Big 12 runner-up gets in. You think the
Big
12
doesn't get in?
Ohio State doesn't? The Big 10 runner-up.
Yeah, that's what I said.
You said Big 12.
Big 12. Yeah,
I said the Big 10. Y'all heard Big 12.
Wait, hold on, Will.
Well, I mean, it's fine. No, the Big 10 runner-up and the SEC runner-up will get in. The ACC runner-up is not going to get in because they're already showing you if Miami beats SMU in the ACC title game, then SMU's already sitting out of the pack with one loss to a top 15 team. So or not even before that BYU lost. BYU was in the playoff. Their only loss was to them, and it was close on the road. So they're already telling you that. So, yes. The Big 8 will get in, he says. Why are we still talking about this, Kevin? Because it's a talk show. The Group of 5 and Power 4 equals 10 teams. No, I don't. The ACC and the Big 12 are not getting their conference title game runners up in because the strength of schedule and what the teams have accomplished in terms of the Big 10 and the SEC runner-up is going to outweigh what those guys did, as well as the teams who didn't get there, because it's harder to reach the SEC title game not really harder to reach the Big 10 title game, harder to reach the SEC title game than it is to reach the ACC or the Big 12 title game. South Carolina will represent the ACC, TriStar said.
South Carolina the reason that Ohio State can get in is because of the eye test. You got to watch the games.
Well, that's
absurd. And they lose twice to the same team.
Anthony says, you said teams that play in conference championship games should get both in participation lists. Yes, I'm clarifying that I meant that teams that get into the SEC championship game and the Big 10 championship game should get both participants in the playoff game. Not the ACC and the Big 12, because those conferences aren't created equally and the quality of teams are not the same. And they're already telling you that by SMU not being in the top 12 to begin with, when their only loss was to a top 12 team before this weekend. Sam says that only applies to the Power 2. Yes. Pretty much what we've been saying for the past 45 minutes is that it's all that matters. 5 SEC teams, 3 Big 10 teams, Notre Dame, the ACC Big 12 group of 5. I could see that happening. I could see it happening. A lot depends on what happens this week, though. And Dr. Bob said this earlier, if Indiana beats Ohio State, it's going to open the floodgates for the Big 10 to get 4 in.
Yeah.
Now, if you wanted my subjective opinion, I don't know what Penn State's done outside of win games against bad competition to get into the playoff. I wouldn't put Penn State. I'd put SMU in ahead of Penn State. That's just my thought process because I don't know what they've done. SMU's gone on the road and won hard games. I'll say this. I think that the Big 10 is a lot weaker than people want to make it out to be. It's top heavy, but it's pretty weak.
The big win that Penn State has is on paper was at USC, where they were down 24-3 at halftime.
And they're terrible.
I agree. I'm saying on paper.
On paper.
And then they got beat by Ohio State, and then they had a close win against Bowling Green. Tech fans know all about that.
God,
so can't live with that.
Dan's gonna comment on that.
That's fine, Dan. If Dan watches this, I don't care.
Sam said, "Wouldn't it be cool if Penn State and Tennessee could play in a playing game?" Sam, I'm
God,
going to
it'd be
disagree with you just because I don't want to keep expanding this thing because it's going to create more of this conversation, and people are going to get mad at it because we're going to have at some point we're going to have a 24-team bracket. And we're going to be arguing Kentucky against Maryland, who should be in, and nobody's going to care because
the men's basketball just said that he came out and said we have a 72-team bracket, so prepare for that.
I don't mind in basketball because
it's what I said last year when we talked about expanding the playoff. I was like, it's irrelevant because now we're arguing, if 5 and 6 should get in. Now we're arguing should 12, 13, 14, 15 get in. It's the same argument, but with worse teams.
Yeah.
We need to move on.
Who cares? It's basketball season.
All right, take
I'll
a quick
go
look.
by 13 at half against North Alabama.
Take a quick look here at our best bets. Sorry, Ralph.
Let's not.
Real quick, we'll get in and out of here with this one. Ralph, I lost. Troy, Ralph won, but twice this week, by the way, because Troy beat Georgia Southern. I took Georgia Southern minus 7.5, and
I didn't blame you for taking that.
They pissed down their leg. Completely pissed down their leg.
I mean, honestly, the best game Troy's played all year.
Troy's trending up. Troy is trending up.
Wrong time to do it. Wrong time.
Ralph wins this week. Michigan State, Illinois. Ralph, really good pick. I mean, that's one of the more solid picks of the season. It makes you look like you know what you're talking about, and that's really big.
Don't because there's a few games that I don't know what I'm talking about. Because
but I went against Michigan.
Look a few weeks above that. I went against Michigan State, and they beat that crap out of Iowa. So.
But you learned from your mistake, and that's what's important.
I realized that Iowa are frauds, and so was Michigan State. The bad thing is that Will has bet against his own team 3 times this year.
Will, do you want to go ahead and pencil in your bet this week?
4 times, sorry.
Texas A&M money line. I don't even need the points because it's plus money, which makes no sense. I don't understand. I don't know what Vegas is seeing.
Looking at y'all's records, do y'all even know? We don't know nobody, so that's the problem there.
We need to get Hugh Freeze on so I can ask him, so I can try to learn some ball and figure out, what he sees.
Sam says, consider this guy's committee 80% vote combo of computer composite, 20% might be Goldilocks just right. I'm not a big porridge fan.
Oh my gosh, you know what that is? That's the BCS. And we went away from that.
Was the BCS
yes.
element?
It did. It did.
Yes. Maxwell just commented something wild, and I think that's where we have to enter the show. Dr. Bob said he can teach Will some ball. I'd love to learn some ball from John Summerall. I'd love to get him on the program. As we get out of here,
Auburn head coach John Summerall.
Look, the December 7th plans, December 7th and 8th plans are, man, they're still fluid. Obviously LSU is a fraud, so they're not going to be able to do it. The Cajuns of Ragin, they couldn't do it, and so they lost to South Alabama. So a trip to Lafayette, Louisiana is still on the line. Got to get some work there. And then we got to see what happens. On December 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Sam, the BCS was the computers were 30% of the BCS composite.
Dr. Bob says I need to come to Uptown. We'll see what happens. Am I going to be in Uptown New Orleans or is I going to be in Uptown Charlotte? Well, we just don't know. We don't know. If I could work out the flights, I'll tell you this. I could go Friday night in New Orleans, Saturday in Charlotte. Look, if you want us to talk about your program, we just need a little loving. That's all we need, a little loving, and we'll talk more about them. All right, we appreciate everyone watching, staying tuned for us for an hour and 20-minute show. A lot of fun, a lot of good conversation. We'll clip it up and you can watch your favorite parts of it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. In a little bit, for fans to know, if you want more about the Georgia Tech North Carolina State game, I'll be live tomorrow night at 7:30 previewing that contest on Thursday. We'll have a full preview of the Week 13 slate on Wednesday, and then a post-game show on Thursday as we talk about that game after whatever happens in Atlanta. Going to be interesting. So Appreciate you watching. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. We'll catch you next time here on the Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce